I don't know if this has filled me with an indefatigable optimism for life.
I just need to build this into my routine and make it a habit.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure if it's working.
For the last few weeks, we've been following a group of volunteers who are trying to be happier.
Last episode, we got a closer look into their lives, and more importantly, how the simple interventions were working out.
We faced the hard truth about experiments. Life can get in the way when you least want it to.
You can do all the right things, consult the experts and recruit volunteers, and still, there are things we simply can't control.
But luckily, we have lots to report.
Today, in the final episode of If It Makes You Happy, we'll find out whether our volunteers are actually happier.
Or if some of this common advice is just plain overrated.
Welcome back to our final episode. We're journalism students at the University of King's College in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
That's on the east coast of Canada. Think lobster.
Lobsters, Anne Murray and the Trailer Park Boys. I remember, Landon. I remember. So to kick us off, Aiden Rodding is back with an update on our musical teacher.
Hey guys, I'm ready to deliver the final report on Laura McRae's 2 weeks of meditation.
Great. It's funny, I actually used progressive muscle relaxation before we started recording today.
No way, me too. It really helped calm my nerves.
What a great tool. If I recall, Laura was able to use progressive muscle relaxation in a moment of frustration last week.
That's right, and it helped. Laura said she would recommend PMR meditation to anyone who's looking to be more self-aware. She also liked that it was quick and accessible. There are tons of free PMR videos online, and you can do it in the comfort of your own home.
Did she feel like it improved her happiness?
Yes, but there were other factors at play.
The weather's getting nicer, and I'm not working right now. So, the stress has decreased considerably, just in my day-to-day, plus the meditation. So I think, it's hard to say if it's all the meditation or if it's a combination of all the things, but I definitely feel happier.
Her response here is making me think of what she said in past episodes, that happiness is not a constant feeling, but rather moments.
Yes, and she's sticking to that view. I have to agree. It's the little things, recognizing the small joys that make us happier overall.
So, what do you think this means for Laura's long-term happiness?
She'll continue to have many joyful moments, but her problems aren't immediately fixed because she did 2 weeks of meditation, right?
Right. Thinking back to what our resident expert Brian said, PMR can be one of the tools in Laura's toolbox.
Do you build a whole house with a hammer? No, you use a lot of other tools, right? Basically, what we're saying here is that this is a tool that is potentially useful, but it's not the only tool available.
Laura's still on her happiness journey. She wants to continue PMR and try other interventions in the future.
I just need to build this into my routine and make it a habit to spend 10 minutes on myself every day to do this, because I have to take care of myself intentionally rather than just sitting on the couch or watching TV.
And Laura thinks people should use what habits work for them.
There's such a trend around wellness and self-care and what that needs to look like. And I think that it's not fair to put those pressures on yourself.
We also got deep during our final call and talked about how the state of the world impacts happiness.
Tell me more.
Cost of living, global warming, war and conflict, even the thought of being happy can feel like a privilege when others are trying to survive in the world.
That's an interesting way to challenge our perspective on happiness.
Laura was also facing a big decision that could have an impact on her happiness. Did we ever find out if she's going to go back to teaching?
She's still undecided on that.
I love teaching, and I see myself always having some kind of connection to education, not necessarily the education system, but teaching, learning, stuff like that. I'm going to take my maternity leave and mull it over and think about it and figure out kind of where my head is at.
But with a baby on the way, I'm guessing she could have a whole different kind of happiness ahead. I want to thank Laura for her dedication to our experiment. I'm so glad I got to meet her, and I wish her the best as she continues her happiness journey.
That's awesome. Thank you, Aiden. Next up is Mr. Joe Spinney.
Yep. I'm anxious to hear how Joe's been making out with that exercise intervention.
Yeah, you said it. Last time he said he wasn't seeing many changes in his general mood. I'm really hoping things turned around.
Our reporter Dylan Taylor is here to fill in those blanks.
Hey Dylan, how's it going?
Guys, I am a pretty happy camper right now.
I'm happy to hear that. What's going on?
Well, I conducted my final interview with Joe the other day. He seemed to be feeling a lot better about his intervention.
Oh, no way. So how did Joe turn it around?
I think it just took a change in perspective. Here's tape from his last audio diary.
Maybe focusing on the big picture, the grand scheme of things. Oh, this hasn't changed my life and made me better. That's not the right headspace to be in. Every day that I do it, I feel better afterwards. The problems are still there, but this isn't a way of solving your problems. This is a way of making you feel more optimistic, more responsible, capable. I think that's a good thing, to not have every solution be this big, grand panacea, this big cure-all. But maybe just a bunch of small little collection of things, you know? To just be another tool for when you're feeling down to just get a little bit better.
So what was getting him so down in that other diary?
I think there were a couple of things going on. Joe told me that he accidentally overextended himself at the gym at one point. Here's what he said about it the other day.
I feel like maybe 30-minute intense workouts weren't the greatest way to go for someone just starting for the first time. Like, I ended up hurting myself maybe a bit more than I was supposed to.
Ouch. Yeah, that sure would kind of make exercise less appealing.
Yeah, definitely. I think he also started to notice how the exercise-induced endorphins gradually started to wear off.
It's a very temporary fix. You got to do it all the time for it to really make a difference because it only lasts for a very short period of time. It's like brushing your teeth or getting a good night's sleep. It only lasts 24 hours before you start feeling bad about it again. You can't say like, oh, I got one good night's sleep this week. I worked out once this week. I'm feeling better. I'm doing good.
I think an adjustment of expectations was definitely part of this upswing.
That makes a lot of sense. Our expert, Brian, seemed to say the same thing when I mentioned that one of our subjects wasn't experiencing many positive effects.
Well, and the problem with that is, what is the goal of the exercise? If the goal of the exercise is to lose 20 pounds, you can't expect it's going to happen right away, right?
Yeah.
But if the goal of the exercise is to feel more energized after the exercise, that should be almost immediate.
So is Joe going to keep exercising going forward?
At the very least, I think it'll continue to be part of Joe's life, even if he's not exercising at the same rate he has been over the past couple of weeks. I think that he finds a lot of value in those little mood boosts that increasing your heart rate can cause.
It's something that at 3 a.m., many different times in my life, I have gotten up and said, you know what? I'm going to make this a habit. I put it in my schedule and I'm going to look up where to go to a gym and how to use the machines, and then I just never do. And now that I know how to do it, it's probably going to be easier for me to do it. I don't know if it'll ever be a regular habit for me, but it's something I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more of, especially on days when I start to feel bad, and I'll probably be like, you know what would really help? Going and lifting a heavy thing.
Well, that seems like at least a partial success.
I'm with you on that. Here's one of the last things Joe said to me the other day.
So it's definitely something that's like, yeah, it's a little touchstone that I can look back on and be like, that's something I can do, but
yeah. Not much more.
Not much more. But
yeah.
Do you really need it to be much more?
I guess I don't know anyone who would turn down a bit of bonus serotonin.
Yes, indeed.
So what's next for you and Joe?
We're actually getting together later this week.
Are you guys going to the gym?
Or maybe for a swim?
Or rock climbing?
You know, I think we're just going to play a board game.
This is the If It Makes You Happy podcast from the audio workshop at the University of King's College in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Want to meet our reporters or see our volunteers in action? Check us out on Instagram. Look for If It Makes You Happy pod. Like us, follow us, and tell us what makes you happy.
And a quick note, we are not mental health professionals. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please reach out for help and resources in your area. As we mentioned, there was a bit of a bump in our experiment. Andy Mullins is here with an update on Haley Landry and the nature intervention.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, Landon. Thanks for having me.
So, Andy, last episode we learned that you couldn't get a hold of Haley. Have you heard from her since?
Yeah, so Haley did actually reach out last week. She apologized for not keeping up, and she said she was no longer in a space where she could take part in the experiment. I asked if we could meet one more time to talk about her experience, but I didn't get a response. Unfortunately, that means there's not much we can report about nature's impact on happiness. Not from our experiment, anyway. But if we think about what Joe and Laura have been telling us, that getting out of your head is the best remedy for unhappiness, then nature still holds promise.
How so?
Well, when we first spoke with our expert, Brian McCauley, he told us that spending time in nature is about grounding.
So that usually is about paying attention to your surroundings, being aware of what you're hearing, feeling, smelling, touching, all that sort of stuff.
Brian tells us that we tend to overthink things, and so happiness requires us to get out of our heads. Naturally, if you're focusing on what's around you, you're less likely to be caught up in your own thoughts. And that's exactly what Olivia Johnson was telling us in the last episode.
Again, that sense of like losing myself where I'm not hyper-fixated on every little detail about myself, which I think the outdoors really does. And you have to like be constantly aware of your surroundings in a way that like meditation doesn't even do.
Olivia says that because nature demands we focus on our basic needs, it forces us to get out of our minds and into our bodies. She says this is a key part of healing, and she thanks evolution for it.
The body knows how to heal itself way better than the mind does. We're literally created to be in nature, I think.
Brian also had some thoughts about evolution.
So if you look at evolution, I would suggest that being in our bodies is actually a primary state for human beings. So what you're going to find a lot is when people are more instinctually connected, they're also happier.
So it really is about the body.
That's what it sounds like. It's about doing things for your body so that you can quiet those thoughts. And I suppose we should have guessed it. If you think about all the things that make us unhappy on a regular basis, doom scrolling, FOMO, worrying about the future, or ruminating on the past, well, it's all driven by our thoughts. So if we're able to replace that negative energy with some basic actions that our bodies are made to do, even if it's just for a few minutes, then maybe we can build a foundation that makes it that much easier to reach happiness.
Yeah, well, Andy, you've given us a lot to think about, and all this talking is making me want to get out to the park. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Now, Landon, I'm really curious. Throughout this experiment, I've been optimistic about our control subject, Zephyr. Even though they were assigned to do nothing, no interventions, I thought their check-ins alone might make them happier. What's going on there?
So in episode 1, Zephyr mentioned that it would be nice to be able to sort of parse through their day and check in with themselves every night by doing these audio diaries.
It was nice to have an excuse to check in on myself a little bit, but I don't think this really impacted my overall mood or disposition too heavily, which makes sense because I'm the group in which nothing is supposed to happen.
So just as they suspected, Zephyr didn't see any real changes in their mood. But they said something that really caught my ear. This whole time we've talked about how Zephyr has been using the audio diaries as a sort of journal. Well, it turns out this isn't a new thing for them. They've done something like this before.
back in 2020, I did one of those things where like at the end of each day, you like mark like was today like a good day or a bad day or a middle day or whatever. In 2021, I had a diary for a while. So I've always like tried on and off to like do these like mood tracking things. But I don't know. I mean, this is tempting me into like starting a diary again or something. I think that is an effect that it had on me, but I don't know if this is, filled me with an indefatigable optimism for life, though I try to keep that anyway.
So even though Zephyr has been our control volunteer, it seems like something even as small as checking in on themselves every day has at least been a little bit helpful.
Yeah, I'm starting to think we should put the word control in quotations, because despite its minimal effect on Zephyr, our expert Brian sees the audio diaries as an intervention.
What that actually is like, reflection and self-reflection. Self-reflection is actually what's going to tell you if I need any support, right? So self-reflection in and of itself is an intervention. This is stuff that we don't tend to give ourselves time to do, and that's why it's helpful.
So maybe another little plot twist there.
Landon, in one of my last conversations with Brian McCulley, he told me something important. The impact of an intervention is individual, but happiness is too.
Happiness doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. So if you're comparing happy between you and somebody else, it doesn't work.
Maybe get off social media.
Follow us first, though. And even when you get to the point where you find a happiness intervention that might fit, finding time to implement that habit isn't always easy.
It's like Laura talking about the privilege of having time to spend on your happiness. Take a parent, for instance. I know a lot of moms and dads feel guilty for something like that. Here's Brian again on how important it is to carve out time to look after ourselves.
I just had conversations of this about 2 of my 3 morning clients, right? The argument is always, well, I don't have time to do something for myself because I always need to do something for work, family, whatever it is, right? So my response from that is you don't have to put somebody else last to put yourself first.
Damn, yeah.
Before we wrap up, I want to share something from my interview with Dr. Jillian Mandich, who we heard from in episode 1. She's the happiness researcher who founded the International Happiness Institute of Health Science Research.
She's the expert who said happiness is like a muscle, right? Something that we have to constantly maintain.
That's her. She reminded me of something most people often forget. A happy life is not a perfect one.
Job losses happen, divorces happen, illnesses happen, all sorts of things. A happy life, so if you think about your happiness like a muscle, it's like your highs start to get higher as it grows, but your lows, they don't go away. They just get higher too. So you become more resilient or better able to cope when hard things happen to us.
And she says it's when exercise or meditation or being in nature becomes a habit, something you do on a regular basis, that's when your happiness could really start to grow.
So on the mornings when it's hard to get going, you have to rely on the habit. You'll know that a past version of yourself has done it before and felt better after.
And a future version of yourself will be thankful.
This seems like the perfect place to say goodbye. But first to say thank you. Our reporters are Aidan Rodding, Dylan Taylor, and Andy Mullins.
If It Makes You Happy is produced by all of us. Our technician is Mark Pinio. Our audio professor is Pauline Dakin.
Avery Dakin composed our original music, and our musicians are Avery on keys, Dylan Hay on trombone, Gabe Galvis Rangel on viola, and Miles Dosman Banks on flute. Laura Publicover designed our cover art.
A big thanks to our volunteers and to our experts, Dr. Jillian Mandich, Stephen Smith, and Brian McCulley.
I'm Landon Morris.
And I'm Raisa Alibi. Thanks for listening. Remember, if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad.
I swear I know that from somewhere.
If it makes you happy.